Hazardous chemicals should be replaced. So there's one of the big mantras in the principles of green chemistry, something which, you know, we've been driving. A lot of research in green chemistry has been based on that principle. So where are we today? Well, the big issue today, of course, is REACH. And, you know, I'm always disappointed when I talk to students of chemistry and they don't know what REACH is, or they have some vague idea. I mean, to me, it's the most important of all the chemical legislative drivers. It's incredibly powerful. And it's going to have, its impact is only just beginning to, people are just beginning to realize it, because it's just beginning to happen. So the first substance is so-called for authorization, which basically means if something's going forward for authorization, it means that there's going to be a massive red flag waving over it. You're only going to be able to use it under very strictly controlled conditions, and there's going to be a huge amount of pressure on you to find a replacement. So really you don't want to go into that space. And more substances are now being put forward for authorization. Some of it's very predictable. So some of the substances you see going forward now, like chromates, you might understand why. Others, it's less obvious. I saw toluene on a recent list, which is going to have a huge impact on the process chemical industry. So REACH is going to happen. It's big time. It's getting more and more important. The number of substances that are going to be considered is growing all the time. So that has to be taken into consideration. Now, because REACH is taking a long time, it'll take at least 10 years to test all the significant volume substances in use in Europe. It's probably about 100,000 different chemicals that's going to have to be tested under REACH. Then actually that means, of course, you know, nature abhors a vacuum and all that, and NGOs have moved into the space. Most famously ChemSec, which is probably Europe's best known NGO, and ChemSec have published something called the SIN list, the Substitute It Now list. And ChemSec are taken very, very seriously. So some of those sectors I implied on my previous slide, like, for example, retail, they take it terribly seriously. So Marks and Spencer, for example, will instruct their suppliers they don't want anything on the SIN list in their articles. So you have to go and look at the SIN list. If you haven't done it already, go on. It's free. Just go on to ChemSec and look at the SIN list. There's about 500 chemicals listed there, which they consider should be replaced. Some, again, you'll probably, most of you go, yeah, I can understand why, but there may be some surprises for you as well. That's probably, I would say, that's one of the better unofficial lists. There are some other ones. I mean, I saw one from the European Trade Unions Congress, which was extraordinary, and had some chemicals on there that you really would think, why on earth are they there? So, you know, bear in mind there's all sorts of things going on out there making people think about chemicals more than they did before. Don't move the problem. Just because you've got rid of something you'd rather not use. Okay, good news, I'm not using chromate, I'm using something else. Just think about, as I said before, think about where you're shifting the problem to. You may be shifting it upstream, you may be shifting it downstream. Be aware, as I said, across the life cycle. Be aware of life cycle issues. They are fundamentally important whenever you do anything. And the legislation, as I've said, is getting very powerful. It just gives you an idea as to how much legislation is impacting on chemicals. I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals here. I'm talking about chemicals. There's been an exponential growth in the legislation, the amount of legislation directly impacting on chemicals. Some people say it coincides with Rachel Carson's famous book. If you don't know what that is, look it up. We celebrated the 50th anniversary last year, the publication. Rachel Carson was the first person to publish a book that really addressed the issue of chemical pollution, really brought it into the public eye. And it's become, of course, a very important issue ever since. All sorts of legislation en route. There's been some really interesting ones. So way back, before green chemistry was even a term, we had best available techniques. So the UK, which of course is really good at inventing things, not so good at following up on them. So the UK invented the concept of best available technique, BAT, and you've probably come across that before. It's still now being used in some legislation. But this was 1991, and I remember going to the first meeting in Manchester, funnily enough, talking about what was then called BATNIC. It was best available technology not entailing excessive cost. Wow, you know? And one guy from a certain company not too far from here stood up and said, well, we prefer CATNIP, which is cheapest available technology not involving prosecution, which kind of, you know, sort of focuses the mind with regards to what really they're trying to do. But anyway, the point is legislation is getting more and more of an issue.